Welcome to the Last in Line podcast, where we discuss faith, hope, and truth in the lives of amazing servant leaders. You are in the right place if you crave purpose and if you hunger for a life of significance. This podcast applies biblical truth to our daily lives, and we pray that you walk away encouraged and inspired. This is the Last in Line podcast.
Hey, we're honored to bring you some good news. Recent development in our sponsorship programs. We are now partnering with Christ Coffee, who is an online business that is working to save children from sex trafficking, and they are spreading the gospel throughout the world. Christ Coffee is more than just a brand. It is a movement where each cup is a testament to their commitment to high quality beans, the spread of the gospel, and making a tangible impact in the community and around the world. For those of you that don't know, which I know all of you do, trafficking of any kind, of kids, adults, men, women, is a major epidemic. More than 1 million children are being exploited, and you can actually make a dent in that in a good way, and help take a part in setting some of those kids free when you shop at Christ Coffee. 10% of every sale is donated to the rescue of children and the spread of the gospel. Their mission, guys, we can partner with that. And each cup you brew actually does go to saving a child. So they're actually blessing us and our customers, our listeners, with a discount. So type in Last in Line and you'll get 10% off of your first order. And it is quality premium coffee beans. Gentlemen, the dark roast is some of the best I've ever had. So don't wait. Go to Christ Coffee, order your first bag, use Last in Line for 10% off that first order, and I guarantee you'll keep coming back. Brew a cup, rescue a child with Christ Coffee. Gentlemen, I'm going to welcome TJ Morris to the show, and if that name doesn't really ring a bell, then you might know him as Bear Independent from his YouTube channel. He is the founder of Bear Independent. He is got over 200,000 subscribers on his channel. He is all about preparedness, all about bear briefings that he calls. He does daily when he's updating us on news, current events, the recent headlines, any tomfoolery going on in Washington. He is the first to speak honestly, really, about it in the language that we can understand. He's the founder and CEO of Refuge Medical, which provides first aid medical supplies and kits. They do in-person training and consulting. They have over 100 and I believe 30 lives have been saved by one of their first aid kits, by multiple first aid kits that they produce and manufacture. He's also the founder of and president of two nonprofits, one called Grindstone Ministries, which is an organization that provides disaster relief, and then finally Caleb House with a K, that is a residential recovery program for families and child survivors of sex trafficking and exploitation. So they provide a home-like environment for those families and those individuals to heal and to grieve, possibly to cope, and to hear the love of Jesus and understand that they do have a hope for a future. And TJ is big into that. They will be building multiple locations for that particular ministry. They have been in multiple locations during storm and hurricane season, helping rebuild cities. And so he is an ordained pastor. He's a husband. He's a father. And the guy has read the Bible, I believe, 10 times, maybe more, cover to cover, and knows his scripture, knows the word, and isn't afraid to talk about it, and isn't afraid to hold us accountable, which I truly appreciate. So, guys, we have a great conversation. He is a great individual. He's a wealth of knowledge spiritually, preparedness and survival, homesteading. He's a wealth of knowledge. So, guys, I hope you got the notepad and paper, notepad and pen ready, and I hope you take notes and share this because this podcast is one of my favorite. So, welcome the one and only TJ Morris, aka Bear Independent, to Last in Line podcast. Bear, it is good to finally meet you, sir. Man, I respect the heck out of the work and the knowledge and your spirituality. And I know all of our listeners know who you are, but thanks for coming on to the podcast today.
I appreciate you, John. Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Man, yeah, it's fun to watch you because you say a lot of what a lot of people are thinking, and I think you're encouraging the folks that follow you to be more outspoken on things that we need to stand against. And for whatever reason, it feels like maybe even the church has been quiet and has been somewhat passive. And so I'd love to get into maybe just how you became, because you've read the Bible, from what I understand, 4 or 5 times cover to cover, maybe more than that.
I'm on my 10th read through currently.
10th, okay.
Actually 11th, because I'm back in the New Testament or Old Testament again. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, so we won't have you recite the entire Bible today. Maybe that's a part 2 to the series. But no, I would love to know your faith journey, how you got here, because I know you come from maybe not so churched background, and correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe you were a drummer in a speed metal band. I don't know. Did I get that wrong?
So I was an absolute heathen. We'll just get that out of the way.
Well, I'll let you go then. Why don't you take us through your childhood?
So, in a nutshell, I grew up in one of those families that we grew up at varying times. We had either tons of money or just destitute, dirt poor. My dad was an incredibly hard-working man, but he wasn't great with finances. And so, everything we had was bought and paid for, but we didn't have grocery money a lot of the time. And so depending on what season we were in, we were either superficially very active in the church, or we were that we'll see you on Christmas and Easter family, And then my best friend, I met at church when I was 6 years old, and he got into the youth group at church, and there were girls at the youth group. And so I was like, hey, if your mom's going to make you go, I'll go with you, that kind of thing. And his parents also ended up getting a divorce, and this really stuck with me. I was about 14 years old. His parents got a divorce, and they got a divorce because his dad was hooking up with some lady from the congregation that wasn't his wife, and his mom was hooking up with some dude from the congregation that wasn't her husband. And they had this huge knockdown, drag out divorce where they fought tooth and nail over who was going to get his little sister, but neither one of them wanted him. And so he came to live with us. And I remember thinking to myself, if this is what it means to be a Christian, I don't want any part of this at all, because I had not yet learned that people make mistakes. The Father doesn't, and I was a young man, didn't have a lot of experience or perspective. Well, the drummer in the church youth group band was a guy named Kenny, and he was joining the United States Navy. And he put his drums up for sale, drums, cymbals, stands, hardware, pedals, everything for $300. And so I've been working forever and a day. I had my first full-time job at 15 years old. I was working part-time jobs before that. Started my first business at 17. And so I scrounged up $300 and I bought that drum set. And I started playing drums. Well, after about 6 months, these dudes that were twice my age showed up at the door and knocked on the door. They're like, hey, man, we heard you play drums and stuff. You want to jam? I'm like, uh-huh. And so we literally in my bedroom had 2 Marshall stacks and a bass stack and a PA system and these drums. And so we started cutting demos. We started playing shows. And next thing you know, I'm literally running away to go on tour with heavy metal bands at the age of 15. And I spent a decade in apostasy. I was just pissed at God. And I was surrounded by, sex, drugs, and heavy metal. And the type of metal that I was playing was in no way honorific of the Father. And the whole time, I think So absolutely, during that time of separation, the Father had his hand on me, and he kept me from certain death, literal, on several occasions. But I think the reason why he kept his hand upon me was, although I was pissed at him, I never denied his existence. It was a war between he and I, but I still knew that he was there. He was real. I was just furious. And as a lot of young men are, a lot of young men have anger issues. And I grew up in a household filled with violence. And, I've been picked on my whole life. And I just, physical violence is something by the age of 15 that was a no-brainer to me. It was something that I was very, very used to. And so, and even in metal, there's an outlet for that. You get in the pit and y'all push each other and punch each other, and it's fun. It's like, cool. I'm good at this. Let's do that. Well, during that decade of apostasy, I studied every entity or ism there is, all of the world's religious systems and belief systems, searching desperately for truth. Fast forward, I'm in North Texas. I've met my wife, and I've got a couple of kids, and our neighbor had come over for one of my kids' birthday parties. And she said, hey, my husband is the associate pastor at this little church. We would love it if you'd come be our guest. He's given the message a couple of weeks from now, and it's kind of a big deal. And, it'd be great if you could come. And I said, yeah, we'll think about it. And she said, look, and this is, to me, textbook perfect, how to invite somebody to church. So she extended the invitation. And then she said, look, we're going to love y'all either way. You don't have to come in order for, us to still be friends, in order for us to hang out, but it would mean a lot to us if you came. Okay, cool. Well, that Sunday rolls around, and my wife happens to be out of town, and so kids are out of town. It's just me. And dude, I woke up early. I drank a pot of coffee. I got changed like 3 or 4 times. I don't know what people wear to church anymore. And so finally I was like, if I'm going to go, I'm going to go as me. And so I showed up in, work jeans and boots and a t-shirt. And I walked in, and everybody was just so freaking nice, like genuinely nice. They're like, hey man, it's so good to meet you. Blah, blah, blah. You want a cup of coffee? And it was this little family church. We met in a cafetorium, half cafeteria, half auditorium, in a middle school in North Texas. And we had a church on wheels, right? Trailer would show up at 7 a.m., put up the pipe and drape, roll in the sound system, move the chairs in, do church. And then by usually about 2 p.m., fold it all up, everybody go home. Well, I sat right in the front row, and the pastor was on fire, just bringing the word. And I was violently, physically shaking the whole time, right? Like literally shaking, because my fight or flight is busted. It's just fight or fight. Like I'm just going to sit here and take it, right? And so as soon as he got done, he's going to worship band, starts spinning up again. He's going to the final prayer, and I'm like, I am out. And I like run to my truck, and I get into the truck, and I drive as fast as I can to get home. And I walk to the front door. Wife and kids are home at this point. She's like, how was it? I said, oh my gosh, it was terrible. I hated every moment of it. She goes, okay. I said, yeah, we got to go back, and you're going with me. And she's like, who the hell are you, and what have you done with my husband?
I got a question for you. What made you sit in the front, given your anger and just kind of disdain for church?
I am
you run toward danger, obviously.
I'm no stranger to confrontation. So if we're gonna do this thing, let's do this thing, right? Like I want the full value of fact, right? I don't want to sit in the back and pretend like I'm participating. Like if we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this.
Yeah. Okay.
And so next Sunday rolls around. Me and my wife go back. Not entirely sure if this is the place we want to bring the kids yet, right? So we got a friend watching the kids. We go back, and we sit right in the front row again. Pastor's right there, and he's just bringing it, bro. He's killing it. He's doing an awesome job. And I'm holding her hand, and she's holding mine, and we are violently shaking like the dirty heathen sinners that we are, right? Yeah. And same MO, man. Worship band spins up. He goes into the final prayer, and we book it out the side door. We get back in the truck, and I'm like, honey, what did you think of that? She goes, oh God, I hated that. And I was like, right? See, I told you. She goes, we got to go back. I'm like, I know. We got to go back. Literally, so we had no frame of reference, bro. Little did I know that it was the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, that was working on us, right? So third time pays for all. Next Sunday, we go in. Again, we bring our kids. We drop them off to the youth ministry, and we, right, same seats, right front and center. Pastor does his thing. Worship band spins up. Bro. Well, he had the associate pastor give the final prayer so that he could ambush us in the hallway as we tried to run out the side door.
They were on to you.
Yeah. They were on to us.
Yeah.
And so he comes to me and he says, hey, I understand you're a drummer. I said, yep, I'm a drummer. He said, we've been praying for a drummer for the worship band for 2 years. He kind of puts his arm around me and he says, would you prayerfully consider joining the worship band and playing drums for us? Well, had my previous church experience, I know the term prayerful consideration from a pastor is a direct order, right? It's basically saying, hey, I need you to do this thing.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, man, I'll think about it. And so he gives me his card. We go home and I'm hem-hawing at the house all afternoon. Should I do it? Should I not do it? I love my wife. She's like, either do it or don't, but shut up about it either way, right? Pick something. And so I'm like, I know how I'm going to fix this guy. And so I pull up my email and start drafting an email to him. And I attach a half a dozen different links to videos of me playing drums in metal bands. I'm like, this will fix this dude.
Yeah.
So he'll never ask me again, right? So I fire off the email. And about 10, 15 minutes later, I get CC'd on a reply from the worship leader. I think his exact words were, oh, hell yeah, get this guy. This guy's awesome. I'm like, oh, nice. I'm screwed. Okay. Yeah. And then I started playing drums in worship bands. And then I moved from North Texas to Eastern Oklahoma, got out here all alone. And I was mad at the Father one day because I knew there was something I was supposed to be doing, but I didn't know what it was. And he said, clear as a bell, read my word. And I said, I am. And he said, on camera, you idiot. And I said, wait a minute, I didn't sign up for that.
I'm not really a camera guy.
Dude, I don't know anything about the Bible, right? And, had this little tiny YouTube channel trying to talk about preparedness. And, faith was not even a feature of the channel at that point, homesteading and all that. Mm-hmm. So we started reading in Genesis. Mm-hmm. And, I literally asked him, hey, where do I begin? Where should I start? Then I heard in the beginning with like this connotation of like, hey, dummy, in the beginning. Yeah. So I flipped to Genesis, Bereshit, chapter 1. In the beginning. In the beginning. I was like, dude, that's so cool,
That's not a coincidence. Yeah.
No. And so now we've read the entirety of the New Testament on chapter and everything, or on camera, and everything from Genesis to now we are in Amos in the Old Testament. Okay. So we're worked through the Pentateuch, the Torah, the first 5 books, and then into the story of Joshua coming to the promised land, and then major prophets, judges, kings, major prophets. Now we're into the minor prophets. And so and then during that process I got ordained as a pastor myself. And so it's been a freaking journey, bro.
It's what I hear, and that's what I've been watching. And I'm a little late to the Bear Independent Party, but man, I'm catching up as quick as I can, watching as much as I can. And it's all right on. I mean, right on where that's the language I speak. So the vernacular is aligned. And so I've been hungering, I guess, for somebody that is a combination of both, right? Like Jesus was lion and lamb, right? And we've got a lot swinging the pendulum to the lamb side. And so I think the hunger for men that are not in church, quote unquote, the building, are hungering for that, and they're waiting for somebody to speak that language. Well, so I guess sort of leads me into, I have a feeling I know what you're going to say, but I want to ask it anyway. The small C church, there's a lot of gaps. There's a lot of vacancy in what that should look like and what it does look like. What's wrong with the 4-wall building, brick and mortar? What's wrong with the fearful, passive, kind of cowardly, I guess, person in the pulpit? And they're not all that way, but I think as a whole, I think we're losing people, I guess. What's going on?
Well, I think there's a multitude of problems there, but I'll address a few. First of all, there's nothing wrong with having a building that's a church, right? And there's nothing wrong with assembling in In fact, in the book of Hebrews, I think it's Hebrews
Yep.
10:26, forsake not the gathering
That's
together,
right.
even as you see the day approaching, right? And so we're supposed to get together. We're supposed to
That's right.
congregate. Messiah said, where two or more gathered in my name, there I am in their midst,
Yeah.
right? And so like, if you're a believer, if you're covered by the blood of the Lamb, you're supposed to fellowship and congregate with other believers.
Yeah.
You know, how are we supposed to reprove and instruct one another? How's iron supposed to sharpen iron if it never
Yep.
intersects, right? So that's good. But if we go to the iron sharpens iron concept, which is what is that? Proverbs
27. Yeah.
27:17, right? So here's the thing, man. If you never sharpened a knife, you don't understand that the iron that's doing the sharpening has to be at least as hard as the iron that's being sharpened.
Mhm.
And so that means, like, let's say you and I are going to sharpen each other, right? Or you're going to come, John's going to come to me and sharpen me. Well, in this facet, in this this vein that we're talking about, whatever it might be, you got to be harder than I am. Now define hard, more experienced, more educated. You need to know more than I do in order to sharpen me. Because if you take something that's softer than iron and rub it against iron, it dulls it. Okay. And so I think a lot of people, the only time that they spend in the word is when they're at church, and then they're being spoon-fed the milk of the word rather than eating the meat of the word. And so one of the things that I think sets me and some of the people in my assembly apart is we devour the word. I've been talking recently about, in order to graduate from kindergarten into first grade, I live in Oklahoma, you have to have 1,260 hours in school.
Yep.
If you read the Bible 2 hours a week, you have to read that Bible for 12 years and 40 days before you have enough area familiarity to graduate from kindergarten to first grade. Okay. And so men are not spending enough time in their word. And because they're not spending enough time in their word, they don't know when somebody gets up behind a pulpit and starts telling them things that aren't biblical,
Right.
or is reproducing inaccurate doctrines and dogmas, interpretations of the word that are not biblical, or they're biblical, but they're taken out of context, so they don't actually mean that. And if you look at the word in both Exodus 19:6 and Revelation 1:6, we're commanded to be a nation of kings and priests. Well, one of the things that people miss is the king was commanded to write his own copy of the Torah, so he could never say he didn't know it. The priests administer to the temple of the Most High. Well, we're supposed to do these things. We're supposed to know them. If you look at the renewed covenant in Hebrews chapter 8, the Father's word, the Father's laws are written on your mind and then on your heart. So you both know them and you are convicted by them. And then he will be your Elohim, and then you will be his people, and then he will remember your sins and your lawlessness no more. And so, Proverbs talks about, if you wish to get wisdom, then get wisdom. James talks about faith is what you do. You say you have faith, I will show you my faith by my works. Not that we're justified by works, but our works are proof of our belief and our obedience to Messiah. And so you don't see a lot of that being taught in the Christian church. And then I think one of the issues that men have in church, or at least that I've had in church, and I've found hundreds of other men that have, is that I have a hard time listening to a guy up behind a podium that's never had dirt under his fingernails.
Yeah.
It's just a fact. And you brought up lion and lamb earlier. Even the concept of lion and lamb, right? The lamb slain from the foundation of the world. Yochanan the Baptist says this as Messiah is approaching the Jordan River for his baptism. And then the lion is the emblem, the symbology of the tribe of Judah. And we know from Matthew chapter 1 that that's where Messiah is descended from, which he had to be in order to be the king in the line of King David that's prophesied in the Old Testament. Different conversation for a different time. And so the lamb, we think of a lamb, right, as this cute little cuddly soft thing. I have sheep in my side yard right now. We eat them. They're delicious. Go into that sheep pen and walk up to one of my rams, right, and see the offering for sin when Messiah is being crucified, and he says, "Forgive them, Father, they know not what they do." That actually comes out of Leviticus 5, which is the offering for unintentional sin, which is it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. And you offer a ram without spot or blemish. for remission of unintentional sin. Go talk to my ram. Go stand in my sheepfold and just walk up to my ram. He will beat your ass.
Yeah.
Like excuse my language. I don't know. If
No, you're good. You just talk however you want. Yeah, no.
Okay. And so like he's 140 pounds, a 4-wheel drive, and a forehead made of bone and horns, and he protects the flock. And so even our concept of what a lamb is skewed by
That's
Christianity. And men, real men, regardless of what your background or what your occupation is, real men are not going to be preached at by little sissies behind the pulpit. And so it creates a disconnect between the message of the word, even if the pastor is trying as hard as he can to bring the word, it creates a disconnect between the word and those that need to hear it. And so one of the things that's been really fortunate for me in my walk is the Father has brought real men of God around me so that we could build context and rapport on a personal level so that I would listen to them on the spiritual level. And I think that's missing a lot from the Big C Christian church these days, where everything is coming, well, can I get my vanilla skinny latte at the coffee shop? And do they have a good children's ministry? And I don't know. I'm not entirely sure if I like the worship band. It's like, we're supposed to be coming in here to commune with the creator of the universe.
Right.
I don't care what kind of lattes they have or not. And if your faith and your spiritual walk is dependent upon you having the appropriate level of caffeination in your veins, we're just playing house at this point. That's not faith. That's not true belief,
Yeah.
So,
well, and I think we also just attribute worship to only being musical. I mean, reading of the word is a form of worship. Gathering to honor that and then embody the doctrine that we're reading is a form of worship. Like, I think we box in worship into this melodic form of, music and instruments, and it's more than that. You did a couple podcasts with Chad Prather. I guess you guys have recently become acquainted and connected, maybe even on a deeper level after those conversations. Brother, that's what actually got me bold enough to reach out and hope that you would respond to this invitation, because the richness and the depth of those two conversations should be like heard by everybody. I was absolutely blown away by those conversations, and I appreciate you guys having those. You've been around some high level people recently. I wanted to get your take on your meeting with the Andy Frisellas and Ed Milet's of the world. You went up and saw those guys and were a part of that. I guess that's sort of an elite group of people that get together. What did you take away, and what was kind of a common thread to the level of achievement that those guys have seen that you find in them?
Sure. So I guess for context for the listener, I am part of the Arate Syndicate, which is I've been a part of a lot of different entrepreneurial coaching groups. I've been entrepreneurial since I was 17 years old. I've been in a lot of different groups by a lot of different internet personalities, and they all suck, in my opinion. Arate does not. And so I've been in Arate for a couple years, give or take, and they had a summit coming up in St. Louis. And I wanted to, so there's multiple different reasons, COAs, courses of action. But I had decided I'm going to go to St. Louis. Before I went to St. Louis, I went and saw Ed Milet speak in Tulsa because I wanted to see who this guy really is. And he killed it. He absolutely killed it. He was recounting stories of growing up with his alcoholic father and the recovery process and how their relationship matured and grew. And I mean, got like choked up, had to stop because he couldn't talk because he was in tears at one point. I'm like, this guy's solid. And I get to St. Louis. I see Ed. Ed was the first that I had seen the first evening that we were there. I said, hey, man, you did a great job in Tulsa. I really appreciate you talking about your faith and being open and honest and vulnerable about that stuff. And he said, I'm feeling really convicted to start talking more about my faith. And he's like, I'm concerned. I don't know if my audience is going to receive it. I said to Ed, why do you think the Father gave you that audience in the first place? If you're not going to use it to talk about him, how long is he going to let you keep that audience? And he's like, thank you. That's a really good word. And then, and let's also not forget Emily Frizella, Andy's wife. She's amazing. She's an awesome human being, and she is a killer on the business side as well. And the whole event culminates. We're at Andy's house or Andy's farm out in the country, and there's a little deck. I don't know, and there's half a dozen chairs on it. And Andy and Ed are sitting there, and myself and a few other gentlemen are sitting there. And somebody asked a question, and we're smoking cigars, having a cocktail, and Ed looks at me and he says, that sounds like a question for a pastor that drinks whiskey and swears a lot. And I said, yeah, all right, I'll take that. And so, bro, it was amazing because, and we'll get to what I said in a moment, but in my flesh, I went to St. Louis because I knew that this was going to be a great business development opportunity for Refuge Medical and for Caleb House, which is one of our nonprofits. I was going to be around a bunch of high net worth individuals, and we're going to be able to network, and it's going to be good. And I'll learn some tactical things that I can bring back to my organizations and implement those things. And I did. But about a half an hour from St. Louis, I stopped for fuel, and I hop back into the truck, get back on the highway, and the Spirit just starts punching me in the face with conviction. I'm like, all right, Father, I'm not here for me. I'm here for you. So please make me say and do whatever you need me to say and do, because I'm not sure in my flesh I'll be strong enough to do it on my own. So I need you to make me do it.
Wow. And
he did. I basically did Pastor Bear stuff for 3 days while I was there, and it was amazing. And so it's the Saturday afternoon. We're at Andy's farm, and this guy asks this question. And very similar to your previous question about, the modern church and how it's become a disservice to men. And bro, I launched into a 20-minute diatribe about what biblical Christianity looks like, what biblical manhood looks like, what the actual definition of meekness is, what it actually means to turn the other cheek, and how you don't have to be a sop and wet P word in order to be a follower of Messiah, because Messiah wasn't either, and we're supposed to walk in his steps. And I'm just, for 20 minutes, this is my shot to talk to Ed and Andy, right? Each ticket cost 15 grand to be there, and it was money well spent. And instead of talking about business development, I'm up here preaching the word of God on this little, this little stage, this deck turned into a stage. And I stop, I get done. And I can feel it when the Spirit's flowing, and then it just turns off like a spigot. I can feel it. Okay, I'm done. Yeah. And you could hear a pin drop. And there was another guy there who's also a pastor by the name of Merritt Vaughn. Great guy. And Merritt leans over and he goes, "Great sermon, Pastor," and just takes a swig of his whiskey. And so I kind of snap back to reality, and I look around, and dude, everyone was there. All the other people had just kind of flocked around to hear the word of God, which is amazing because his word will not return to him void, right?
Yeah. Prosper sent. Yep. That's right.
It was a beautiful experience. And I could tell you from that, Ed and Andy are very real people, very real people. What they say they are is what you get. And I'm anticipating going back to St. Louis because they're real. And if, anybody in that group, Arte or anybody else, if I can be of a service to them in a pastoral or scriptural capacity, I'm open to it because there's just a bunch of good people in there.
Well, and that is to me, from my previous point of what's the hunger is out there, that's a microcosm of, I think, of what more men are wanting to hear, the way that you say stuff. And I know that you're not the only one that speaks his mind like that, but when you incorporate truth, biblical truth, and you do embody, right, the doctrine that you read and talk about, the stars align with what the need is out there and what people are desiring. And so those guys at that level, from a business standpoint, for them to be that captive audience and to actually be attentive and hungering for that, to me, sets the table for what I think in a bigger picture for our country. I think we're on the verge. And we could talk about how bad the country is and where we're going in November, but I think the country is on the verge of some awakenings out there in some high level influential circles. So that's just my thought, and I believe the Holy Spirit's reinforced that. But man, you got in front of some people and you delivered some truth, and that's what we need more of. Let me ask, if you don't mind, what on your drive up there, a lot of people, like, to me, that's not something to gloss over, that moment where you were obedient to the Spirit's leading. A lot of us would have, once you had already bought into the flesh side and you're like, this is a great business opportunity, like, I'm going to come back with all kinds of nuggets to grow my profession and my business. What can you say to the listeners to empower them from an obedience standpoint in that moment where you were like, okay, I've been wrong the whole time. I've got to redirect. My paradigm has got to shift.
So, first of all, I think it's reps and sets. He who can be trusted with little can be trusted with much, right? And so I'm not going to say that I'm great at being obedient, but I will say that I have gotten better at it, because every time I've listened to the Spirit, the Father has given me another opportunity and another opportunity and another opportunity. And so I just have a lot of experience with listening to that conviction, and then also being able to ascertain, is this a conviction of the Holy Spirit? Is this anxiety? Is this nerves? What is this? Yeah. And then also being just consistently prayerful in the moment, not, I'll pray about this later. No, I'm going to talk to Dad right now. Like, he made me, he made everybody else, he made this entire planet and everything that's on it. Like, he's sovereign over all things. So I'm just going to go directly to the source on this one. Hey, Dad, what do you need me to do? And if I get a reinforcing word in prayer that reinforces the conviction of the Spirit, well, in the mouths of two or three, let a thing be established. Okay, I'm up. I'm going to listen now. But, the Father tells us all the time, first of all, we have his written word, and we have the accounts of his word made flesh in our Bibles. And that goes back to area familiarity, because a lot of people think that their situation is special and unique. Man, people have been being people for a long time. We got all kinds of stories about people being people in the Bible, and what we should do, adherence to, and what we shouldn't do, transgression of the Father's instructions. And so we need that area familiarity, because there's patterns and cycles, as talked about in Ecclesiastes. For everything, there's a season. Right? But then also, when that Spirit comes upon you, you've only got two options. You can be obedient or you can be disobedient. And I would encourage you and your listenership, go read Deuteronomy 28. It's really important, because it is a prayerful covenant between the Father and his chosen people. And I would argue that if you believe in Messiah, you are part of his chosen people, about what blessings and what curses will come upon you due to your obedience or disobedience. And a lot of people think about curses like there's some black magic dude standing over here in the corner waving a wand at me. No, it all goes back to, you reap what you sow. Curses are when things go wrong in your life. Blessings are when things go well in your life. And in all of those things, we have to acknowledge the Father. And it was either our adherence to the conviction that we had, or our transgression of the conviction that we had. And I have seen that. Dude, I told you, I spent 10 years, a decade in apostasy. I know what disobedience looks like. If it's bad for you or bad for somebody else, I've probably done it. Okay. But having that much dwell time and that much experience on the side of disobedience, I know what it's like to get your ass kicked by the creator of the universe. I don't want to go back there. That sucked. And so now I want to live on the other side of the equation. I want to try, and it is actually in my best interest physically, in my physical existence, to be obedient spiritually. And a lot of people misconstrue. They think that we're spiritual beings. That we're physical beings that have the occasional spiritual experience. That's not true. We're spiritual beings that are having a temporary physical existence. And so our direction should come from the spiritual side first, and it will pay dividends on the physical side.
That's well said. No, that's really good. And man, when you mentioned Deuteronomy, I love that, the passage in there, because it's talking about he's given us a choice, right? He says, choose life or I give you power, life or death, blessing or cursing. I say choose life. Well, I believe that in every moment in the day, we're given those opportunities. Everything's a test throughout the day. It's not just like, hey, what was a big test you had this season? I have about 1,000 a day. Like, I mean, tests, and a lot of them happen in here in between my ears. But in the scripture that talks about in the New Testament about how, there's no temptation uncommon to man, and God gives us an escape, right, for temptation. I think that's not just limited to physical sin. Like, I believe that is in your situation in the truck where you had an opportunity to choose, right? God gave you an opportunity. He gives us escapes from our flesh, and he gives us an opening and an invitation into that spiritual decision. And you made it. I think a lot of us in those moments feel it, but then we disqualify it or we move past it real fast because we don't want to face that. Like, we don't want to be nose to nose with that moment of obedience or disobedience. We just want to be like, I bet a lot of people go the direction where they could have just said, no, this is really a good business opportunity. God opened the door for my business here. And maybe he did for that too, but you were cognizant enough to say it's deeper.
Well, I think another thing that people suffer from is fear and doubt as well.
Yes.
Why I can't be obedient to this because I don't have the experience. I don't have the resources. I mean, look at Moses in the Old Testament. I can't lead Israel. I'm not good at talking.
Stutter,
what did the father do? He's like, hey, I'm sending you Aaron. He's really good at PR. Okay. He's coming. Don't worry about it. And so, what we have to remember is that all of our giftings and talents and delights belong to the Father. What most people call coincidence or happenstance or serendipity, that's all divine timing from the Father. If he convicts you to do something, he's going to absolutely create a way, if not multiple ways, for you to be obedient, because he seeks that obedience from you because he loves you, so that you will experience the blessings of a good kid who made dad happy. It's just as simple as that.
That's good. That's good. No, and you mentioned Revelation earlier, and I'm going to transition a second to some of your companies that you own and founded. Because I mean, it's fascinating. Because I mean, I know you mentioned your dad was an entrepreneur and wasn't the greatest steward of resources, but you've kind of honed in on the way to make this work. But on Revelation, I've been digging in, and again, I told you I'm a late bloomer anyway. I'm just a late to the party, it seems like, in a lot of areas. But Revelation, man, I have dug in the last probably a month or so. I've wanted to just get face to face with some of the apprehension I've had digging in, because you don't hear a ton of Revelation sermons from the pulpit. You don't hear a lot of Bible study guys going, hey, let's study Revelation this month. You don't always hear that. So I was like, I'm getting in here. I mean, what's the best way? And I have some thoughts, but what's the best way you could describe Revelation to maybe a newer believer that maybe is like avoiding that last book of the Bible?
Sure.
Like, what could you say to them that might encourage them to get in it?
Sure. So, first of all, I've read all of Revelation on camera, and chapter by chapter with interpretation. So if anybody's stumbling in that, Bear Independent is the YouTube channel, just Bear Independent Revelation in the search bar. Because there's a lot in Revelation. My encouragement would be, honestly, with Revelation, at least have basic area familiarity with the rest of the Bible. Like, take the whole book for a spin, because what John, is experiencing on the Isle of Patmos, which was a prison island about 90 AD, off the coast of Crete in the Mediterranean. See, they tried to boil this guy alive, and he didn't die. And they're like, what can we do? Put him on an island. He can turn big rocks into little rocks with a sledgehammer for the rest of his life. Okay. So John's out there. He's an old man. Okay. So this is 90 AD. Messiah was crucified somewhere between 30 and 33 AD. All right. So he's probably in his 80s. And John has this vision. The angel Gabriel comes to him and just reveals this vision to him. What John is seeing is if you took all of the major and minor prophets, so, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Joel, Daniel, there's a lot of Joel and Daniel in the book of Revelation. John is seeing this vision that is an amalgamation, a conglomeration of all these other visions that were gifted to or revealed to the other prophets that are in the Bible, starting with Moses, who was the first prophet, all the way up to the time of Messiah, who was prophesying in Matthew 24. And there's a lot of congruency between Matthew 24 and the book of Revelation. And Gabriel is bringing these visions to John to reveal to John, I would submit to you in chronological order how this is going to go down. Now, on the chronological order part, there's a lot of people that bring up the concept that there are multiple different timelines that are happening in Revelation. I disagree. And the reason I disagree is twofold. First of all, it would be the only book in the Bible that is not in order. And my God is the God of order, not the God of chaos. Okay. Secondly, there are some very popular pet doctrines and dogmas that require, per their dogmas, Revelation to be out of chronological order. And I don't find those dogmas to actually be biblical. I find them to be traditions of men, not to be biblically accurate. So John has this vision, a series of visions, where it's actually a vision of hope. Okay, so it begins with the 7 churches. There's 5 that aren't doing great and 2 that are doing great. And Messiah's saying to them, hey, I love you guys. Get your poop in a group because I'm coming back. Right. And then John is brought into the throne room of God, and he sees these 24 elders and these 4 living creatures. Well, the 4 living creatures, first of all, 4 in biblical numerics, not numerology, but 4 represents the earth, the 4 corners of the earth, the 4 cardinal directions on a compass, et cetera, et cetera. And so it also identifies there's 4 different tribes that are at the forefront here, which is Dan and Ephraim, and I can't remember the other 2 off the top of my head right now. But anyway, the 24 elders. Well, that's the 12 tribes of Israel and the 12 apostles. So this is the union between Old Testament and New Testament. Okay, and they're worshiping Elohim. And then John's distraught because that no one can open this scroll, right? And behold the Lamb. And so here comes Messiah with all this power and authority, and these judgments start coming upon the earth. The judgments are a sifting and a separating. Okay, 1/3 of the trees are burnt up. 1/3 of mankind dies. Well, that goes all the way back to Genesis. Getting a little extra biblical on you here, but with the first falling of angels, Shem, Jaza, and 1/3 of the angels fell to earth. And then you fast forward to the Levitical sacrificial, substitutional sacrificial offerings, where 2 rams were slaughtered to God. 1 ram was sent to, the goat was sent to Azazel, which means utterly separated out in the wilderness. So their sins were separated from the children of Israel. 1/3 to the bad guy, 2/3 to God. Okay, so fast forward to Revelation, 1/3 of mankind, and the sifting continues to go on. And then wormwood hits, which is this giant mountain-sized asteroid that hits, and it makes the waters bitter. Well, the bitter waters go back to the book of Numbers. I believe it's Numbers chapter 5. And it's the bitter waters was a ceremony that was performed in order to ascertain if a wife had been unfaithful to her husband. Well, we're the wife of Messiah. We're the bride, and he's the bridegroom, and he's coming back. Okay? So all this stuff is going on, and there's this despair. And in the middle of this, then Satan falls from heaven, comes to earth, and just starts persecuting the believers in Messiah. By the way, there's a lot of people who are like, they ask me all the time, hey man, are iPhones the mark of the beast? Was the jab the mark of the beast? What's the mark of the beast? First of all, chill, because in Revelation chapter 7, all of the Father's people get sealed in the forehead first. The enemy has no new ideas. He's a copycat. Okay. And so all of the Father's people are sealed in the forehead first. And then the enemy, and there is again, a sifting and a separating. The beast system, if you want to be able to continue to buy and sell, you're going to be over here, property of the enemy. If you're already sealed in the forehead by the Creator, you are. That's why Messiah says in Matthew 24, let those who are in Judea flee to the wilderness. Hey, you guys got to come out of her, my people, lest you partake of her sins and receive of her plagues. Revelation 18:4. So this separation continues to happen. The woman is, sorry, I'm giving you Revelation in a nutshell here.
Well, I was just, I didn't want to have to put you, I wasn't trying to put you on the spot, but it doesn't sound like I did. You don't have to go through the entire, I just was wondering
give me 2 more minutes and I'll wrap it up. Unless you got a hard out.
Keep going. I
Okay.
don't know,
All
because
right.
I'm thinking to
Cool.
myself, is Revelation a warning or a celebration? It might be both, but go ahead.
It is. It's a warning of a celebration to come if you're on Team Messiah.
That's right.
It's utter destruction if you're not. Okay.
That's right.
And so Messiah, or the Father, seals all his people in the forehead first. Satan falls to the earth. The woman, which is representative of the church, the body of believers, she is taken care of in the wilderness for 3.5 years. It's actually 3.45 years in the wilderness.
Not to be technical.
Not to be technical, but so good. She's taken care of in the woods, in the wilderness, for a place prepared for her by Elohim. And I would submit to you that that place is prepared for her by the Creator, just like Joseph prepared 7 years of food for all the earth because he was convicted to do it. And just like Noah built the ark because he was convicted to do it. And so it's a cornerstone of why we live a prepared lifestyle, myself personally. And we'll circle back around to that.
That's awesome.
And then, so the enemy is just killing people left and right. Things are getting bad. More judgments are being poured out. The earth is falling apart. And then, behold the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. And so many people have been taught that Jesus is some hippy-dippy, fun-loving, tie-dye wearing, really nice guy.
Yep.
And then you read Revelation 19. If you're a 45 caliber guy, Revelation 19:11. Easy to remember.
There you go.
Okay?
There you go.
Easy to remember. Revelation 19:11. And here comes Messiah. And
sword out of his mouth. That's
his
right.
eyes are on fire. He is pissed.
Blood
and he
dripping
bodies
off
everyone.
robe. That's right.
If you are not on Team Messiah, you get bodied. Okay.
That's right.
And see, this is the thing. People talk about, I can't wait for the coming of the glory of the Lord, the day of the Lord. The day of the Lord is understood in the Old Testament to mean a day of judgment. And it is not good if you are not on Team God. It's as simple as that. And so everybody talks about there will be peace on earth. The way peace is made is that there's nobody left to start any trouble. Okay. He's Messiah. It's called Mashiach ben David, the prophesied Messiah in the line of King David. They wrote songs about how many tens of thousands of men David killed in battle. Okay. This is the spirit that he's coming in when he returns, and he wipes all the bad guys out. And then there's the first resurrection, and then which is believers and Old Testament saints. It's way deeper than that. Right. Then the millennial kingdom, then Gog and Magog, because a lot of people are asking, what is Russia-Ukraine war? Is that Gog and Magog? It's a 200 million man army. Okay. It's a different conversation for a different time. Wow. I got videos on YouTube, and Messiah wipes them out too. The Father sends hail from the heavens. They're utterly destroyed. And then everybody's like, I'm going to go to heaven. You are. Where's heaven? The heavens and the earth. There's a new heaven and a new earth. And the center of the new earth is Jerusalem. Okay. Not Jewish stuff, because the Jews are one of 12 tribes and they've taken over the term Israel. Israel is Genesis 32. He who is struggling with Elohim, he who is ruling with Elohim, and he who, struggling with Elohim has overcome with Elohim and is ruling with Elohim. Okay. So it's a pattern of behavior for our belief. First, you struggle with it, then you overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of your testimony. And then you are ruling with the creator of the universe, God, Elohim. Okay. That's Israel. Ephesians chapter 2 for anybody who needs to get plussed up on that. And then Romans 11 as well. And then literally heaven descends on earth, and literally the temple is God, and literally Messiah is high priest, and we are all here worshiping, and forever and ever. Amen. And that's the book of Revelation.
Wow.
It is a prophetic warning to John. Hey man, times are going to get terrible, but even in the midst of things getting terrible, the Father will continue to protect and steward and provide for his people so that we can be reunited with the bridegroom, the King, Messiah.
Yes. I'm glad that you did that. And I'm confident that was a spiritual moment for me and the listeners, but for me preparing, me and another guy are going to go into some of that next week. And I needed to hear that. So I'm glad you did that. Thank you. I mean, it does,
welcome.
it shines a light on, 22 chapters that I'm sitting there and we can kind of overanalyze, we can over dissect, right? And I know God's word is worth that, but to me, I can just get in a whirlwind and circle in my mind of trying to sift through some of that information. But you broke that down very good. Now, I almost think as you're talking and you talking about both sides, the God team and the non-God team, almost a subliminal message of the mission mandate out of Matthew 28. Like I'm almost thinking if we're on God's team, we don't want people to be on the other team. Like that should empower and motivate and stimulate our evangelism gifting, right? Now, do you consider yourself to have that sort of gifting? Because I know you're a teacher, I know you're leadership, I know you're all into a lot of the giftings, but how can we be better at evangelism, brother?
That's a great question. I actually don't consider myself to be gifted at it,
Okay.
but I do have a couple of pointers because I counsel with a lot of people.
Yeah.
I am the better bring your steak knife and your fork because we're going to eat the meat of the word pastor. I'm that. I'm not the milk of the word pastor, and that's okay because when people have to be weaned off of milk, right? We're all sheep, right? And so,
right.
why is Messiah the shepherd? Because we're all sheep, and sheep get weaned off the milk so they can eat the meat. That's us. That's me. That's what I do. But as far as evangelizing to other people, one of the best ways to connect with other people is to let your life be your resume. The way you walk is your witness. Okay. And so if you're a mess and you're telling people, hey, you got to get over here, man, and be on Team Messiah, and they're like, look at you, dude, you suck. Like, I don't want what you've got. Right. And so for me, what has worked for me is I've had so many people reach out to me, or I run into them in the store. And it's funny too, because the Spirit knows. The Spirit that's in me knows you're a believer and vice versa, right? You meet people in a grocery store that for some reason are just spiritually attracted to you. It's because, your vibe attracts your tribe.
That's right.
And so my life is my witness, is my testimony. I am living proof that the Father is faithful, that he keeps his word, and that there are myriad blessings in store for those who are obedient. And so people come to me and they ask me questions like, how do I get what you got? Now I'm like, now we can have a conversation because you've given me permission,
invitation.
to
That's
speak
right.
to you, And so now all that being said, I'm not saying that's the only way to do it. I've got a brother who from time to time, fairly frequently, about every other week, just gets a conviction. He's like, I got to go into the big city and go preach the word. You do you, homie. And he does. And he's very good at it. That's not my gifting. But I really do believe it's about having rapport with the people that you're trying to connect with and having a life that somebody else would want. And I don't mean that physically. I don't mean you got to have a big house and a nice car and millions in the bank. I mean your quality of life, that there's a calmness about your spirit, that you're introspective and considerate, and that, one half of the two prime directives is love your neighbor as yourself.
Right.
That you're loving in your interactions with people, even if you disapprove of how they live their life. Cool. Because you rewind far enough back.
I was there.
Absolute scumbag. Right. But it took somebody who cared enough about me without, and here's the thing, right? We see all the time in the Christian church, love the sinner, hate the sin, 100%. But shame on us if we keep them in sin. We're not supposed to tolerate the sin. We're supposed to love them through it and move them out of it, introduce them to Messiah so that they don't want to sin. They don't want to live that lifestyle anymore.
And I would say too, a lot of Christians would agree with what you're saying about living the example, but I think sometimes we rest in that too and think, if I just live right, people will want to know. Well, what if they don't ever get so curious to ask like they do you? Like, you're a public figure. Yes, they're going to ask, but maybe just an ordinary average Joe like me, I can't sit around and think, man, if I just take enough cookies to my neighbors, they'll eventually want to know why I'm doing that. I'm exaggerating, but so we do have to have a proactive initiating step in the way we evangelize. And if we don't like that word, then we can just say how we start a conversation. So I think there's ways to do it. I don't think that it's always just, live right.
If you're already doing it,
Yeah.
extend the invitation for people to participate in what you're already doing.
Right.
Like, I don't want to start a Tuesday night Bible study with you, but if you're already having a Tuesday night Bible study and you invite me to come, I'll probably consider it.
That's
if
right.
you invite me a couple times, I'm probably going to show up.
That's right? Good. That's good. No, I agree. Well, your professional footprint has been pretty profound, I would say. And again, I'm starting to understand more about what you do and your companies and the Caleb House and Refuge Medical and Bear Independent. And I'm probably leaving some out, but this came to me and as those three. So you're restoring the afflicted with Refuge, you're rescuing the captive with Caleb House, and you're rebuilding cities with what's the why can I not
Grindstone.
think of it? Grindstone. Yeah.
Yep.
So Grindstone, you're rebuilding cities, you're rescuing the captive, and you're restoring the afflicted. And I mean, that is, to me, it's profound because you're absolutely impacting the world we live in. Now, talk to me about, you weren't always, you didn't wake up saying, I'm going to go build houses for kids who are sexually trafficked. I'm going to go restore communities like Barnesdall, Oklahoma, who was wiped out by a tornado. And just so you know, as a side note, I grew up in the Tulsa area. So my wife grew up in Bartlesville, so she knows Barnesdall very well. So I was living that as you were doing that with her, and we were like in awe of what you guys were doing. But tell us how this all, like, were you always just have a heart for those people and you wanted to build companies around that?
So this is going to be a slightly protracted answer, but hang with me on this.
Gotcha.
I've always had a heart. Like, even when I was a scumbag heathen, I still knew right from wrong, right? And we grew up poor, but we grew up neighborly as well. You take care of your neighbors. And there were times I remember growing up where we had a 2-acre garden, dude, growing up. And we would, hunt and pressure can and hot water bath can, and
Nice.
dry all this food for winter. I grew up in upstate New York. And the neighbors would fall in hard times. And I remember my mom going into the pantry with grocery bags back when they used to be made out of paper instead of plastic, and loading up like a month's worth of groceries for the neighbors and just taking it over there. And just my mom is one of the most loving people on the face of the earth, and just being astounded by that, because I'm like, we worked so hard on that. Like, what if we run out? She's like, if we run out, somebody else will take care of us. Like, okay, cool.
Wow.
And so I told you when I first came to Oklahoma, I had this little YouTube channel, and the Father told me to read his word, and I did, and I still am. And have this person, I guess the professionals call it a personal brand, which is Bear Independent. And opportunities, obedience brings blessing. Opportunities started to present themselves to me. And so about 5 years ago, I got a phone call from a guy named the Reverend Gilbert Abreu, who runs Night Runner's Mobile Crisis Response out in Florida. And he said, hey, Bear, Panama City, Florida was destroyed by a hurricane. It's 5 months later, and it still looks like a war zone. Can you help us? And I said, yeah, man, I don't know how I'm going to help, but I'll be there. Oh, I hit the wrong button on my little thing. Sorry.
Kind of cool.
Yeah, it went dark for a moment.
Lighting, yeah.
And so anyway, so I go out there and we fundraised through the YouTube channel. We raised $3,000, rented a minivan, filled it full of because I didn't have a vehicle that would make it to Florida and back. Filled it full of food that people donated. Drove $3,000, drove 3,000 miles. It was me and 32 volunteers from the Bear Nation from the YouTube channel. And we fed 3,000 people for 3 days, and then came home and miraculously still had $3,000 in the bank account. Because loaves and fishes, bro.
I mean, come on.
And I was slaughtered in the spirit on that. And I was like, we got to go back. We got to go back. And so one of my brothers from church was like, hey, man, that thing you did in Florida was awesome. I want to come with you next time. It's like, cool, let's go. So we go back a second time about 6 weeks later, literally twice as many volunteers, twice as much work, the whole nine. And I was like, there's something here. We're going to keep doing this. I'm going to keep doing this. So let's wrap an entity around
God's
it.
math works, right?
Yep,
Multiplication.
100%, man. And that goes back to your question about being obedient in the spirit.
Yep.
Just go. He's going to provide a way for you to go. I'm living proof of it. And so we founded Grindstone, which was our first 501c3. At the same time, I was making, I'm into preparedness. I've just always have been. Like I said, grew up poor. I like to have some stability in my life, and I can see what's happening in the world. And if the world falls apart, I don't want to fall apart with it. And that's not a lack of faith in my creator, because Joseph put up 7 years worth of food and was able to bless people with it. Cool.
Sure.
I'm doing the same thing. And so,
that's not a scarcity mindset at all.
Not at all. It's an abundance mindset.
That's a gifts and that's a talents.
I want to be able to operate from a position of strength to be a blessing to those in need. It's as simple as that. Yep. And so, I needed a first aid kit that didn't suck, and I couldn't find one. And so I had a buddy who had a sew shop, and I literally took the lid of a pizza box and I cut the cardboard out of it and folded it and duct taped it. And I said, hey, can you make me one of these? I sent him that and $1,000.
A pizza box. Come on.
Yeah, I used the lid of a Domino's pizza box to prototype the Bear Fact.
Come on, bro.
It's now on 4 continents with 132 lives saved.
Jeez.
Cool. And so he sent me back 6 of them, and orders started coming in. And I asked my audience, hey, you guys want first aid kits? And I had a couple of friends in the military. I got a small order here and a small order there from the military. And then I asked my audience, and I was like, hey, you guys interested in first aid kits? Overwhelming response was yes. Dude, Refuge Medical started blowing up. We went from my barn to 500 square feet to 1,700 square feet to 8,000 square foot. And right now we're bootstrapping. We don't operate in debt. And so we're saving to build a 20,000 square foot facility next to our 8,000 square foot building on the land that we own. And so I think we got 26 families currently that are supported by Refuge Medical.
Military. Now, are you doing just in time type inventory? Like you're making the kit, the actual bag, but the supplies, are they hard to come by?
They're incredibly hard to come by. I wish we were doing just in time. It's one of the things COVID ruined. Used to be just in time logistics was amazing because you didn't have to, no long lead times on inventory. You didn't have to carry a high inventory valuation, which by the way, you can and will be taxed on the value of your inventory.
Of course.
And so, and then availability as well. Quick Clot, I used to be able to order Quick Clot 3 times a week. I'm now allowed to order it once every 6 weeks. It's just simple as that. As conflict grows around the world, medical supplies become more and more scarce, and scarcity breeds value. So that's basic economics.
Yeah.
And so I started Refuge, and Refuge has just ballooned and grown into this wonderful thing that provides revenue to pour into the 501c3 side. And then we were on a Grindstone deployment. See, Grindstone's just a bunch of just awesome, super righteous, convicted people. Tornadoes and hurricanes have seasons. We were in between seasons, and they're like, we got to do something. Let's go do something. So we go volunteer at this place that was a restoration facility for juvenile human trafficking survivors. And I'll spare you all the details on that, but we were there for about 6 weeks. Anything we could fix and improve, we did. It was amazing. And the second to last day on property there, I'm walking out of our bunkhouse, and I'm just looking up into the clouds, talking to the Father, and I'm like, this place is amazing. You've just been showing off the last month and a half, man. Thank you. Thank you for being amazing. And I was like, man, this is a really important cause. We got to have more of these. And he said, clear as a bell, bro. Yeah. And you're going to build them. And it was like a, record stops. And I'm like, wait a minute. I don't know the first thing about anti-human trafficking. I don't know. I don't know how to do that. Clear as a bell. You build it, I'll handle the rest. Okay. And so the next day we finished up on that site. We come home, and I got with my executive team, and I said, hey, I think we need to start another 501c3. Now, one of the mottos in our organization is no new businesses And we throw this at each other all the time because there's so many opportunities in the world. No new businesses.
Yeah. Hey, I got an idea. Right.
Yeah,
right.
exactly. No new businesses. And I said, we were at our exec meeting and I said, listen, we need another 501c3. And everybody's kind of looking at me like, yeah, okay, boss, sure we do. We need one more thing to do, like we need another hole in the head. I said, we're gonna start a nonprofit that's going to be active in the anti-trafficking space. And you could have heard a pin drop. I said, yeah, we're going to call it Caleb House because Caleb was a biblical badass, slaying giants in the promised land. They said, okay, what are we going to do? I said, we're going to build a restoration facility. So there's a pipeline for these kids who are getting trafficked. They have a place to go so they don't become property of the state. They can actually be restored. Well, we did that. And through a lot of trial and struggle and heartache, we are building the first Caleb House restoration facility now, while we also maintain a network of safe sites where I currently have people who are in recovery right now. And we are also incredibly active on the rescue side because it turns out 90% of all the money in North America that's spent on anti-human trafficking is spent on awareness. It's not spent on anything but making Instagram posts and tweets on X about raped kids bad.
No dirt under fingernails is what you're saying.
No dirt under fingernails, bro. And so I was like, and there are a handful of groups out there, covert groups, clandestinely funded, civilian, that are getting work done, getting in there, rescuing people, doing good works. But there's no pipeline for the children that they rescue afterwards. There's 420 DHS sanctioned beds in North America for juvenile human trafficking survivors.
How many?
420.
That's
46 kids.
low.
46 kids a day are trafficked. Okay. 17,000 a month go missing. 46 a day are trafficked. There's a 1 in 4 chance that if your kid runs away, that they will engage with a pimp at some point.
Sure.
Yeah. And I didn't know all this when I started. The marching orders I got from the creator of the universe was build a building. It's like, I can do that. I got that. And that again illustrates he meets you where you're at and then he grows you, right? Because if he had told me all the stuff we were going to be doing on day one, I would have said no. I would not have been able to be obedient. And so
that was intentional on his part.
Yeah, 100%. Right. And so now we're building our first restoration facility that will house 60 children in 10 homes, 6 kids in each home with a pair of house parents in each house. We have a blue collar staff, a white collar staff. So we've got,
all age groups or?
So this is specifically 0 to 18 years old. These are juvenile human trafficking survivors.
I got you.
We have other programs. If you're 18 and a day older, we have partners to our left and our right that we work with and that we trust that we can pipeline those people into those programs.
Yeah.
But
wow,
we're building this first facility, and the goal is to not build one facility. It's to build as many as we need to until the problem is dealt with. And then we'll use lessons learned from the first one to build the second one, so forth and so on. And if I got to build 832 of these things, I'll do it.
Wow. I'm interested to know if there's and I can probably find it on the website, but what scripture is sort of the hallmark scripture for the Caleb House? Because there's so many that would apply.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Psalm 127 comes to mind, whereas if the Lord doesn't build, I'm paraphrasing, but if the Lord doesn't build the house basically crumbles type of thing. So I didn't know if you had like a.
That's a good one. We haven't finalized anything like that, but I like your suggestion. One of the things that I've seen on the operational side that's been really interesting is that there's a lot of, I'll just put it this way. There's nobody that comes to work with or volunteer with Caleb House, whether that's operationally in the field doing bad stuff to bad guys, or it's, the restoration side, putting kids back together, or I'm a framer and I want to bang 2x4s to help you build. Not one person that either they themselves or somebody that they are directly related to and that they love that needed a place like this when they were younger. Jeez. And that's been really interesting. One of the things that I was completely blindsided me was how much restoration we would be providing to our staff and our volunteers, because some of these people They are meat eaters, bro. They were property of the United States government for a 20-year career, and they've been places that don't exist and done things that never happened. And they need recovery too.
Wow.
And so it's such a pervasive thing, you know, sexual abuse and trafficking. We're here now. And I never thought that this would be a part of who I am and what I do, but I was literally there this morning on a track hoe digging drainage ditches for my construction team out there. So yeah.
Let's go. Wow. Well, I mean, someday you'll have to probably, you know, answer for, when you get to heaven, you'll have to answer to Joshua how he lost the coin flip on the name of the Caleb. There might be some explaining to do. No. Well, man, Bear, I mean, I could sit and talk to you all day long, and I probably just went all over the map. So I apologize if it wasn't super seamless on how this outline went, but I feel like the conversation was amazing. Like that's as understatement as I can get. But man, it's been an honor. Tell me because you're a guy that wants people to just not talk about it. Like, I know my son for sure said, don't use the term prepper when you talk to him, because he does not like. I said, I will not do it. But he's like, he doesn't care what gun you carry. He's like, Dad, don't ask him what kind of handgun you should get. Like, because he and I've been talking about, I'm in the market, but he goes, Dad, he's going to tell you, as long as there's dirt on it and rounds fired and you're training with it, I don't care what you're carrying. So tell us how we can get involved and not just talk about all the great stuff you're doing. Like, what can the listeners do to help out?
Sure. So bearindependent.com, you'll find links to everything we do. Between Patreon and YouTube, we've got over 7,000 videos and live streams. Use the search bars on both of those platforms, because there's a lot of content there. You know, if you're brand new to preparedness, you don't know anything about preparedness, you want the Prepper Classroom, Bear Independent Prepper Classroom. It's like 30 episodes, whiteboard classroom style, breaking down the math behind what should I do, how should I do it, et cetera, et cetera. And then grindstoneministries.com is our disaster relief. And if you know, that's an entirely volunteer organization, entirely privately funded. So if you want to come and play with heavy equipment and chainsaws with us and come feed people and love on people, just contact us through grindstoneministries.com. And again, if the spirit's on you and you want to throw us a couple bucks, that we're all 100% privately funded. Same thing with Caleb House, Caleb with a K, KALEB house.org. If you want to volunteer your time and your services at Caleb House, or you'd like to support the mission, you can find out more about us there. And then I'm reluctantly famous on the internet, man. Bear Independent YouTube channel. And as far as like, what should I do to get prepared? I'll leave you with this, man. The first thing you should do is not freak out, because preparedness is physical insurance. That's what it is. It's a physical insurance policy. And just like an insurance policy, it'll grow in value over time. And we pray to God we never need to use it. I do not wake up every morning and flip out about what the current cash value of my life insurance policy is. It's just there. And if something bad happens to me, my wife will be taken care of. It's the same thing with preparedness. Break glass in case of emergency. And so I do think people should be getting prepared, because it's very, very hard to tell which direction things are going to go in the near term. Yeah. And I don't want good people to suffer, but I also don't want good people to suffer in the process of getting prepared and chew all their fingernails off and become an anxiety monster because, did you see what Russia did today? Or what about China or the election? Or, yeah, I know. We all know. So you should be aware of those things, but do not let them rob you of your joy, because we freaking win in the end, bro. Yeah. And trials are guaranteed. James, my brothers, count it all joy as you fall into various trials, for the proving of your faith. Roger that.
Well, it's kinetics could be inevitable. Like, we know that it could get, kinetic in a hurry. And you just, like you said, you don't want something and not have something to need it, right? It's just insurance. I like what you said. You also had a quote that says, skills cost you nothing and go with you everywhere. I love that. I had to write that down. But so your classes are needed. And so the folks, including myself, I would say, it doesn't matter all the gear you have, right? If you don't know where to find it, number one, and if you don't know how to use it, number two, and if you don't practice it, number three. So I would love, now, do we have to go to Oklahoma to get a class like in person, or are you kind of mobile on some of that?
Through Refuge Medical, which is our first aid kit company,
Yeah.
really what Refuge is we are a tactical medical company. And most people think tactics means guns and violence. Tactical means violence. If you've ever seen a car crash, it's violent. Okay, so we do trauma medicine is what we do. And we do teach out of Spiro, Oklahoma currently. We've traveled all over the country, taught thousands of students. Right now, with the staffing that I have on the training side of the house, if you or your church or your homies or whatever would like a private class, you can just email sales@refugemedical.com and we can set up private classes for you. Public classes, as far as traveling public classes, we do a few a year, and I would recommend that you sign up for the news blast at refugemedical.com. And we usually do those classes like when we're traveling for an event. Like if I'm going to North Carolina for mountain readiness, we'll set up a class there. If I'm going to Self-Reliance Festival in Camden, Tennessee, we'll set up a class there. Or wherever it happens to be. If we're going, bring the training cadre, bring the training equipment. Let's do some classes while we're here. But as far as open enrollment, coming to a city near you, we're not currently doing that because it's 2024 for us too, and the costs associated with it are astronomical. So,
okay.
But I will tell you this: we've had people as far away as from Canada, Germany, Alaska, New Hampshire, Mexico, Africa, who have all come to Spiro, Oklahoma to train. And we have had people who have been legit badasses in the military, people who've had professional emergency personnel careers, 20, 30 years, come to class and go, wow, that was amazing. That's the best class I've ever been in. So I think it's worth the drive.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know how you feel about being an Okie, but I will say I'm one at heart, so it wouldn't hurt me to come up and get some of that red clay under my fingernails. I almost asked you too. I wanted to, before we got on here, I was going to say, man, hard to believe you didn't join the military. Was that ever on your radar?
100%. It was. So,
because you fit the model, like 100% spec ops just drips off of you, man.
My older sister was in the Army. My pastor was in Special Forces. Two of my cousins are Navy SEALs. My best friend was in the Navy. My uncle was Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps. My great grandpa was the last United States Marshal of the Oklahoma Territory. My grandfather was in the Army. I mean, my aunt was a nurse in the Navy. It's just a thing that we do. I broke my sternum in a logging accident when I was 17, and I was medically disqualified from service. I was in the pipeline for the United States Marine Corps, and it broke my heart as a kid.
Dang, man.
Father had other plans.
That's right. That's right. You just started building businesses and doing tactical work on your own. Didn't need a business card to
well, and now I get to work with those guys and girls, which is cool. I'm not those guys and girls, but I have deep respect for those guys and girls, but I still get to work with them when we still get a knowledge transfer. So it's cool.
You speak the language for sure. Well, that's good, man. Well, I thank you for doing this. I know your time's precious, and one thing you can't make more of is the minutes in the day. So, man, I appreciate it very much. With that, audience, he has been the one and only Bear Independent. We've been Last in Line. Be blessed.